Animal Man was by Grant Morrison, who was part of the British invasion. They came to Vertigo with the unusual opportunity to rethink all of the DC characters in a new and interesting way, and they took it in different directions. Memorably, the Sandman by Neil Gaiman was a reimagining of Sandman. Swamp Thing was reimagined by Alan Moore. We had Shade the Changing Man reimagined. All these characters were reimagined. Now, Grant Morrison is famous or infamous for his out of the box thinking, like completely not tethered by any rules. And yet he's able to pull it off because of what we said last week, because he is such a phenomenal writer. The structures of his stories are so good. His dialogue is so amazing that he was able to pull this off. Now you'll see that in number 26, it's a photo cover that indeed is Grant Morrison himself kicking Animal Man. It is the issue in which he actually appears in the comic book as the writer of the comic book Animal Man. And leading up to it, from the earliest issues, there were little clues, little hints that there was somebody controlling Animal Man. And behind the scenes, there was something happening. And if you go back and reread this, you'll see that he had been planting the seeds for 2+ years that he pulled through, starting with issue 24, whereas you can see the character right here is quite literally dreaming of DC comic books, actual DC comic books. They take the idea of monkeys with typewriters. In this case, the monkeys were typing the works of Shakespeare. And in this issue, the monkeys, after a certain amount of time, actually completed Shakespeare. Nothing was more mind-blowing than when Animal Man met his maker, who went by the name of the writer. In this particular scene here, he is literally admitting he is the mastermind behind the scenes, and I am your writer.
But up until that point, it was just a standard comic.
It was not. He was immediately playing with the concept of what a hero is and what villains are. And then there were standard parts of it, I will agree. There were also these weird angles that he took with villains that sometimes made no sense. And that was not traditional. What is Victor Medina saying here?
Victor wants to know, once you sell an editor on a crazy story idea, do you have to get the artist on board as well?
It's a fair question. In the case of DC Comics during that time, Morrison would have just come in as the writer. He might have had influence on who the artist was, but generally when you are working with Marvel and DC and do not have a lot of political strength and capital in that company, you are assigned a team that will do your stuff. But as you gain influence, sometimes you do get to do your own selection. And then Ari has the Animal Omnibus on his TBR, to be read pile.
Yep.
Well, we just blew it for you, because here's how it ends. Quite literally, Grant Morrison, drawn, I guess, as a pale, very pale individual.
He looks like Dream.
He does look like Dream. So in this story was, like I said, they had been teasing that there was a mysterious figure. Here and there, they hinted that it was the writer. And in the final panel of the cliffhanger of 25, he meets the writer. He invites him in. And of course, this is where Grant Morrison says, I am your writer. And it goes to the ultimate meta level. Many creators have inserted themselves into stories. I think this was one of the very few times that the writer literally curated the story. But what was happening here was, on a meta level, was Grant Morrison was telling his character that, yes, he harmed his family, his wife, Ellen, and the kids, murdered on the final page of the actual issue with the letters page. Why did you do this? Well, it's to crank up the drama, the grief, the acceptance, and to make a dramatic story. And he writes that he was very upset last year. One of his cats had died, so he was writing from a perspective of pain, and he introduces the cat, but that's why he kills the family of the lead character for dramatic purposes. Mike, what were your thoughts when you had heard about this story and this very meta thing, and do you think that it worked?
I think it worked in a way. When it comes to this level of meta, I'm not always the biggest fan of it. That to me takes you out of the story part. You're like, oh, now I'm somewhere else, and it's, you know, way off the ranch. It's completely gone crazy.
It
So,
was completely off the ranch, and it
but
had gone crazy. And yet here as a reader, I was thrilled by the idea that somebody said, I'm going to try something completely different. And I will tell you that, even today, I don't much appreciate the artwork that came in this issue. I don't think that it pulled through very well. The stories, many of them had a very meta hook to them. They got stranger and stranger to the point where they were irredeemable. And then I believe that was the end of the run. And then he went on to do, I don't know if he did this before or after Doom Patrol, but in both cases, super weird, meta, untethered. What did you say? Off the ranch?
off the ranch.
Go ahead. What does Gatilla say?
I remember when one of those monkeys typed, "It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times." Also, Morrison melted my brain with the endless.
Morrison melted my brain several times, and I tried not to do too heavy on. Okay, go ahead.
Let's see.
Ari's going into literature.
Yeah, the character meeting the writer is something Kurt Vonnegut did in his 1973 novel Breakfast of Champions. I mean, this has been done a few times. They did this in the TV show Supernatural, where
Yeah, I heard about that. I was doing
yeah,
research.
yeah, they met the writer of the Supernatural novels.
Was it the actual writer?
It was not the writer. I, it ended up that the writer of the Supernatural novels was God. Yeah, it went a little crazy. Like Supernatural is one of those shows that where something like this works for me, but reading it in the comic, it didn't really work for me.
All right. Well, I'm okay with that. All right. So for me, mind blown and in a good way. And I was glad that the writer did it. I appreciated the meta references, and what made it work also was carefully constructing the rules of the world and setting it up so many issues in advance. If it just happened, I don't know if I would have appreciated it, but I was able to then go back and say, okay, you were setting this up for a while. You just didn't run out of ideas and then just come up with a one shot.
Yeah. Drawn Swords asked, wasn't there a Deadpool comic where he killed his writers?
You know what? That does sound very Deadpool like. I would say that if you think so, it probably is. Go ahead, Mike.
Morrison took some crazy chances with Animal Man. Not all of them land, but they were definitely memorable.
I agree with Burnett. And I think that Burnett was not as well served by the artwork, was not a fan of this artwork. Maybe it works for some people. It just didn't. Chaz Trog didn't work.
Supernatural was partly produced by the Tick artist writer Ben Enlund, and the writer character, I believe, was named Carter Edlund.
Wow. I
Could
hope
be.
he's doing that from memory and not like Googling us. And
He's not Googling it right now.